The Brave Little Tailor. One summer's day, a little tailor sat on his table by the window in the best of spirits and sewed for dear life. As he was sitting thus, a peasant woman came down the street, calling out, "Good jam for sale! Good jam for sale!" This sounded sweetly in the tailor's ears. He put on his frail little head out the window and shouted, "Up here, my good woman, and you'll find a willing customer." The woman climbed up 3 flights of stairs with her heavy baskets to the tailor's room, and he made her spread out all the pots in a row before him. He examined them all, lifted them up and smelled them, and said at last, "This jam seems good. Weigh me 4 ounces of it, my good woman. Even if it's a quarter of a pound, I won't stick at it." The woman, who had hoped to find a good market, gave him what he wanted, and went away, grumbling wrathfully. "Now, heaven bless this jam for my use," cried the little tailor, "and it shall sustain and strengthen me." He fetched some bread out of a cupboard and cut round off the loaf and spread the jam on it. "That won't taste amiss," he said, "but I'll finish the waistcoat before I take the first bite." He placed the bread beside him and went on sewing, and out of lightness of his heart kept making his stitches bigger and bigger. In the meantime, the smell of the sweet jam rose to the ceiling, where heaps of flies were sitting, and attracted them to such an extent that they swarmed it into masses. "Hey, who invited you?" said the tailor, and chased the unwelcome guests away. But the flies, who didn't understand English, refused to let themselves be warned off, and returned again in even greater numbers. At last the tailor, losing all patience, reached out with his chimney corner for his duster, and exclaiming, "Wait, and I'll give it to you!" he beat them so mercilessly with it. And when he left off, he counted the slain, and no fewer than 7 lay dead before him in outstretched legs. "What a desperate fellow I am," he said, and filled with admiration at his own courage. "The whole town must know all about this." And in great haste the little tailor cut out a girdle and hemmed it and embroidered on it in big letters, "7 at a blow." "What did I say? The town? No, the whole world shall hear of it," he said, and his heart beat for joy as a lamb wags its tail. The tailor strapped the girdle around his waist and set out into the wide world, for he considered his workroom too small a field for his prowess. Before he set forth, he looked round him to see if there was anything in the house he could take with him on his journey, but he found nothing except an old cheese, which he took possession of. In front of the house he observed a bird that had been caught in some bushes, and this he put into his wallet behind the cheese. Then he went on his way merrily, and being light and agile, he never felt tired. His way led up a hill, on the top of which sat a powerful giant who was calmly surveying the landscape. The little tailor went up to him and greeted him cheerfully and said, "Good day, friend. There you sit at your ease, viewing the whole wide world. I'm just on my way there. What do you say to accompanying me?" The giant looked contemptuously at the little tailor and said, "What a poor little creature you are." "Oh, that's a good joke," answered the little tailor, unbuttoning his coat, and he showed the giant his girdle. "There now, you can read what sort of fellow I am." The giant read, "7 at a blow," and thinking they were human beings the tailor had slain, he conceived a certain respect for the little man. But first he thought he'd test him, so taking up a stone in his hand, he squeezed it till some drops of water ran out. "Now, you can do the same," said the giant, "if you really wish to be thought strong." "Is that all?" asked the tailor. "That's child's play to me." So he dived into his wallet and brought out the cheese, and pressed it till the whey ran out. "My squeeze is smooth, better than yours." The giant didn't know what to say, for he couldn't have believed it if it weren't for the little fellow. To prove him again, the giant lifted a stone and threw it so high that he could hardly follow it. "There, my little pygmy, let me see you do that." Well thrown, said the tailor, but after all, your stone fell to the ground. I'll throw one that won't come down at all. He dived into his wallet again and grasped the bird in his hand, and he threw it up in the air. The bird, enchanted to be free, soared up into the sky and flew away, never to return. Well, what do you think of that small piece of business, friend? Asked the tailor. You can certainly throw, said the giant. But let's see if you can carry a proper weight. With these words, he led the tailor to a huge oak tree which had been felled to the ground and said, If you are strong enough to help me carry the tree out of the wood. Oh, most certainly, said the little tailor. Just you take the trunk on your shoulder. I'll bear the top branches, which are certainly the heaviest part. The giant laid the trunk on his shoulder, but the tailor sat at his ease among the branches, and the giant, who couldn't see the tailor sitting, was going on behind him. He had to carry the whole tree, and the little tailor in the bargain. There he sat behind the best of spirits, whistling a lusty tune, and carrying the tree were mere sport. The giant, after dragging a heavy weight for some time, could get on no further, and shouted, I must let the tree fall. And the tailor nimbly sprang down and seized the tree with both hands as if he had been carrying it the whole way, and said to the giant, Fancy a big lout like you not being able to carry a tree. They continued to go on their way together, and as they passed by a cherry tree, the giant grasped the top of it, where the ripest fruit hung, and gave the branches into the tailor's hand, and bade him to eat. But the little tailor was far too weak to hold the tree down, and when the giant let go of the tree, it swung back up into the air, bearing the little tailor with it. When it had fallen to the ground again without hurting himself, the giant said, What? Do you mean to tell me you haven't the strength to hold down a feeble twig? It wasn't strength that was wanting, replied the tailor. Do you think you would have been anything for a man who has killed 7 in a blow? I jumped over the tree because the huntsman is shooting among the branches near us. Do you like it if you dare? The giant made an attempt, but couldn't get over the tree, and stuck fast in the branches, so that here, too, the little tailor had the better of him. Oh, you're a fine fellow after all, said the giant. Come and spend the night with us in our cave. The little tailor willingly consented to do this, and following his friend, they went on until they reached a cave, with several other giants were sitting around a fire, each holding a roast sheep in his hand, which he was eating. The little tailor looked about him and thought, Yes, there's certainly more room to turn around in here than in my workshop. The giant showed him a bed and bade him to lie down, and to have a good sleep. But the bed was too big for the little tailor, so he didn't get into it, but crept away into the corner. At midnight, when the giant thought the little tailor was fast asleep, he rose up. Taking his big iron walking stick, he broke the bed in two with a blow, and thought he had made an end of the little grasshopper. At early dawn the giants went off into the wood, and quite forgot about the little tailor, until all of a sudden they met him trudging along with the most cheerful manner. The giants were terrified at this apparition, and fearful lest he should slay them, they all took to their heels as fast as they could. The little tailor continued to follow his nose, and after he had wandered about for a long time, he came to the courtyard of a royal palace, and feeling tired, he lay down on the grass and fell asleep. While he lay there, the people came, and looking him all over, read his girdle. 7 with a blow. Oh, they said, what can this great hero of 100 fights want in our peaceful land? He must indeed be a mighty man of valor. They went and told the king about him, and said that a weighty and useful man he'd been in time of war, and that it would be well to secure him at any price. This counsel pleased the king, and he sent one of his courtiers down to the little tailor to offer him, when he awoke, a commission in the army. The messenger remained standing by the sleeper and waited till he stretched his limbs and opened his eyes, when he tendered the proposal. That's a very nice thing I came for, he answered. I am quite ready to enter the king's service. So he was received with all honor and given a special house of his own to live in. But the other officers resented the success of the little tailor and wished him 1,000 miles away. Oh, what's to come of it all? they asked each other. "If we quarrel with him, he'll let us out, and every blow 7 will fall. We'll soon be at an end of us." And so they resolved to go in body to the king, and to all send in their papers. "We are not made," they said, "to hold out against a man who kills 7 at a blow." The king was grieved at the thought of losing his faithful servants for the sake of one man, and he wished heartily that they never set eyes on him, or that he could get rid of him. But he didn't dare to send him away, for fearful might kill him along with the people and place himself on the throne. He pondered long and deeply over the matter, and finally came to a conclusion. He sent for the tailor and told him that, seeing what a great and warlike hero he was about to make him an offer. In a certain wood of the kingdom there dwelled 2 giants who did much harm. By the way they robbed, murdered, burned, and plundered everything about them. No one could even approach them without endangering his life. But if you could overcome and kill these 2 giants, you should have his only daughter for a wife, and half the kingdom in the bargain. He might have 100 horsemen, too, to back him up. "That's a very fine for a man like me," thought the little tailor. "One doesn't get the offer of a beautiful princess and half the kingdom every day." "Done with you," he answered. "I'll soon put an end to your giants, but I haven't the smallest need of your 100 horsemen. A fellow who can slay 7 men at one blow need not be afraid of 2. The little tailor set out, and the 100 horsemen followed him. When he came to the outskirts of the wood, he said to his followers, "You wait here, I'll manage the giants by myself." And he went into the wood, casting his sharp little eyes right and left about him. After a while he spied the 2 giants laying asleep under a tree, and snoring till the very boughs bent with the breeze. The little tailor lost no time in filling his wallet with stones, and then climbing up on the tree under which they lay. Then he got out about the middle of it. He slipped along a branch till he sat above the sleepers. Then he threw down 1 stone after the other on the nearest giant. The giant felt nothing for a long time, but at last he woke up, and pinching his companion said, "What did you strike me for?" "I didn't strike you," said the other. "You must be dreaming." They both lay down again. The tailor threw down a stone on the second giant, who sprang up and cried, "What's that for? Why did you throw something at me?" "I didn't throw anything," growled the first one. They wrangled on it for some time till, as both were tired, they made up the mind and fell asleep again. The little tailor began his game once more, and flung the largest stone he could find in his wallet with all his force, and hit the first giant in the chest. "This is too much of a good thing," he yelled, and sprang up like a madman. He knocked his companion against a tree till he trembled. He gave, however, as good as he got, and they became so enraged that they tore up trees and beat each other with them, till they both fell down dead at once on the ground. Then the little tailor jumped down. "It's a mercy," he said, "that they didn't uproot the tree that I was perched in, or I should have had to jump on like a squirrel from one to the other, which, nimble though I am, would have been no easy job." He drew his sword and gave each of the giants a very fine thrust or 2 on the breast, and then went to the horsemen and said, "The deed is done. I've put an end to the 2 of them. But I assure you it was no easy matter. They even tore up the trees in their struggle to defend themselves. But all that's of no use against one who slays 7 men at a blow." "Aren't you wounded?" asked the horseman. "No fear," answered the tailor. "They haven't touched a hair on my head." But the horsemen wouldn't believe it till they rode into the wood and found the giants sweltering in their own blood, and the trees lying around, torn up by the roots. The little tailor now demanded the promised reward from the king, but he repented his promise and pondered once more how he could rid himself of the hero. "Before you obtain the hand of my daughter and half my kingdom," he said, "you must do another deed of valor. A unicorn is running loose in the wood, and doing much mischief. You must first catch it." "I'm even less afraid of 1 unicorn than of 2 giants. 7 at a blow, that's my motto." He took a piece of cord and an axe with him, and went out into the wood. Again he told the men who had been sent with him to remain outside. He hadn't long to search, for the unicorn soon passed by, and on perceiving the tailor, dashed straight at him as though he were going to spike him on the spot. "Gently, gently, not so fast, my friend." And standing still, he waited for the beast who was quite near, when he sprang lightly around a tree, and the unicorn ran in with all its force against the tree and rammed its horn so firmly into the trunk that it had no strength left to pull back out again, and was thus successfully captured. "Now I've caught my bird," said the tailor, and he came out from behind the tree and placed a cord around the neck first, then struck the horn out of the tree with his axe. When everything was in order, he led the beast before the king. Still, the king didn't want to give him the promised reward, and made a third demand. The tailor was to catch a wild boar for him that did a great deal of harm in the wood, and he might have the huntsman with him. "Willingly," said the tailor. "That's mere child's play." But he didn't take the huntsman into the wood with him, and they were well pleased enough to stay behind, for the wild boar had often received them in a manner which did not make them desire to further acquaintance. As soon as the boar perceived the tailor, it ran with him with foaming mouth and gleaming teeth, and tried to knock him down. But our alert little friend ran into a chapel that stood near, and got out of the window again with a jump. The boar pursued him into the church, and the tailor skipped round to the door and closed it securely. So the raging beast was caught, for it was far too heavy and unwieldy to spring out the window. The little tailor summoned the huntsmen together so that they might see the prisoner with their own eyes. Then the hero betook himself to the king, who was obliged now, whether he liked it or not, to keep his promise and hand him over his own daughter and half of his kingdom. He had known that no hero warrior, but only a little tailor stood before him. It would have gone even more to his heart. So the wedding was celebrated with much splendor and little joy, and the tailor became a king. After a time, the queen heard her husband saying one night in his sleep, "My lad, make the waistcoat and patch these trousers, or I'll box your ears." She thus learned in what rank the young gentleman had been born. Next day she poured forth her woes to her father, and begged him to help her get out of a marriage with a husband who was nothing more or less than a tailor. The king comforted her and said, "Leave your bedroom door open tonight. My servants shall stand outside, and when your husband is fast asleep they shall enter, bind him fast, and carry him into a ship, which shall sail away into the wide ocean." The queen was well satisfied with the idea, but the armor-bearer, who had overheard everything, being much attracted to the young master, went straight to him and revealed the whole plot. "I'll soon put a stop to this business," said the tailor. That night he and his wife went to bed, at the usual time, and when she thought he had fallen asleep, she got up and opened the door and then lay down again. The little tailor, who had only pretended to be asleep, began to call out in a clear voice, "My lad, make the waistcoat and patch those trousers, or I'll box your ears. I've killed 7 at a blow, slain 2 giants, and led a unicorn captive, and caught a wild boar. And why should I be afraid of those men standing outside my door?" The men, when they heard the tailor saying these words, were so terrified that they fled as if pursued by a wild army, and they didn't go near him again. So the little tailor was and remained a king till the last day of his life.